I was in one of those organizations run by the Dark Ones. Honestly, getting in wasn't hard. Over time, I realized that pretty much anyone could join. The hard part was staying in. My story started when I was pretty young. I had never had a formal job. My only vice was playing soccer. I spent my time playing street soccer matches, and that's where I made some money because I played for bets. Everyone knew that I played for money to help with my household expenses. So when a man approached me to tell me they needed people to work, honestly, I didn't think about it much. That's how I ended up at one of those places they call safe houses. I first remember seeing several men who I later realized were instructors. There were about 4 of them. One of them, the one they called the Russian, seemed to be the one in charge. When there were only 8 of us, he said something that I still remember.
There are just 8, and I won't waste my time with them. I want at least 15.
And he left. Afterward, more people arrived, from ranches, neighborhoods, and some looked like students. Honestly, there was a bit of everything. There were some who seemed very confident, and others who, from the moment they arrived, you could see the fear on their faces. When there were about 25 of us, that's when the tests started. That's where I started to get to know several people. There was one we called El Flaco. He ran really well, but when it came to coordinating anything else, he seemed like a newborn. There was also El Gordo, who seemed likely to drop out early, but he proved to be extremely determined. And there was another one they called El Chore, who talked a lot. He said he'd seen it all and nothing surprised him. The first few days, he did nothing but show off. There was also the kid. He was quiet. He seemed younger than several of us, and he was the one I ended up talking to the most. When we had the chance, we would sit down to rest for a while and talk about anything, sometimes about soccer, sometimes about our families. Honestly, a lot of us got there without knowing each other, but as the days went by, you started to get fond of some people. The tests seemed simple when they explained them to you. The problem was they kept repeating them. There were days when we all ended up covered in dirt, sweaty, and in a bad mood. The worst part wasn't the physical exhaustion. The worst part was that there was always someone who made a mistake, and we all ended up paying for it. That's why, little by little, the arguments started. Some people got angry because they felt like they were carrying the burden of other people's mistakes. Others just isolated themselves and didn't want to talk to anyone anymore. Some tried to win favor with the instructors by highlighting others' mistakes. Those were the ones people liked the least. No one wanted to be near them because you knew that anything you did, they would talk about it. I remember one time when one of the guys hid a bottle of water to keep it just for himself. When they found it, they made all of us do extra work for hours. No one said who it was, but we all knew perfectly well who it was. After that day, several people stopped talking to her. It may seem silly, but when everyone is tired, hungry, and in a bad mood, anything can become a problem. We slept very little. There were nights when you barely closed your eyes and felt like you had just gone to bed when they were already waking you up again. Some people fell asleep sitting up or talked to themselves from exhaustion. I often saw people staring into space, unable to handle the sleep deprivation. And to avoid saying too much, there were days when living together got tough. You can probably imagine what happens when you put more than 20 people together, all tired, stressed, and not knowing what to expect next. There were harsh jokes, arguments, and moments when you'd rather stay quiet to avoid getting into trouble. Something that scared us was a notebook that the instructors always carried. They never let it go. They wrote things about each of us in there, and every time that notebook showed up, we all got tense. No one knew exactly what each note meant, but we all knew it was important. As the days went by, I started to notice something. There were people who disappeared. One day they were there, and the next they were gone. No one asked anything. It wasn't a place where you felt like asking either. Even so, you noticed. Especially when the person you had been talking to the night before didn't show up the next day. By the 4th week, there were a lot fewer of us. That day, they lined us up and called our names again. As we were being arranged, I noticed the other line had those who struggled most, the ones whose names often appeared in the notebook and who always fell behind. And that's when I saw several of the people I had met. I saw El Flaco, I saw El Nino, I saw others with whom I had shared food, exhaustion, and entire weeks of it. When they finished, they told those of us in my line to walk toward some trucks. We got in, and as we moved forward, I was still able to see several of the others. Some were serious, others seemed confused, and others still believed that it was all part of another test. It was only when we were moving away that we heard the gunshots. Then we saw several birds suddenly fly out from the trees. Honestly, nobody spoke. We didn't need to ask what had happened because we all understood in that moment. I turned to look at one of the guys with me, but he was staring straight ahead like everyone else. And I think that's what hit me the hardest, not the gunshots, but that several of those people were no longer faceless to me. They weren't strangers anymore. They were people I had spent weeks with. That's when I finally understood something they had shown us from the very first day. Getting in had been easy. The hard part was staying.